Kumi, good to see you.
Always good to see you, Cobus.
You know, when people talk about corruption and climate change, do you think it's really an issue?
I think it's a fundamental issue because, in fact, most of the economic activities that lead to climate problems are things that happen in fairly remote places, that they happen not under the transparency and visibility of citizens and so on. And drawing attention to it is very difficult because those industries such as oil, coal and gas are shrouded in opaqueness and lacks heavily in transparency.
Kumi, over the next couple of years, one of the areas that we might well see big movement on big climate funds, mitigation, prevention, all of those. What would you want TI to do to ensure that those funds are more accountable, that there's not corruption in it? So you've got 3 wishes, what we should do that will make you happy.
One is get directly involved now, right? Because the rules of how the fund will be managed and all are being written up now. Sadly, that's all that we have. There's no money in the fund of substance to talk about. But if those countries that carry the biggest climate debt do actually in the end pay their climate debt, we will see serious money flowing into this Green Climate Fund, both for adaptation as well as mitigation. And I think that the second thing is to then ensure whatever the rules of how disbursements and so on are happening are actually honored. And then I think TI is well placed to actually develop a monitoring and evaluation of the impacts. You see, the other part of the problem is often when we are asking the question, was something corrupt or not corrupt, we just say where the rules followed, but we don't actually ask the question, did the money have the impact that it actually supposed to have? And I think if TI could help on all, tracking the flow of the money, of course, but also posing the question about impact, because this is where something might be legally corrupt, but actually in effect be, legally acceptable, but will still be corrupt. So, I'll give you if you take our country, our president is making a big investment in the rural village he comes from. You actually look at it, there's geothermal, solar, and so on that's going to power this whole village, right? So, something that could be argued as a climate adaptation thing. But when you look at it in the broader context, should it be where the president's homestead is? Should it be in more needier parts of the country? So I think this whole issue of formal compliance versus manipulation of abuse of power.
But I want to push you a little bit more there. When we think back, of the time of the Paris Declaration, and we got involved, we did to some extent that in terms of development aid, more accountability, all of that. I think we missed a trick there because it was very much recipient countries to donor countries, whereas the real spirit of the Paris Declaration is mutual accountability and accountability to the people. Do you think we already live in a world that, particularly on climate change, local populations will have the appetite to be interested in a downward accountability right to them?
Yes.
Why do you say that? I mean, when your work in Brazil and all over the place, I mean, do you think that this kind of real appetite at the bottom is there?
Yeah, I think has the economic context, the environmental context, social context, actually makes lives harder for people, which is what's happening to many, many people around the world. They are looking for solutions, they're looking for ways to make their life easier. But I still hold the hope that in 20 years' time, if you and I are having a drink in Cape Town on Table Mountain, right, we'll say, well, we tried our best, we didn't get 100% of what we want, but we actually were able to stabilize the climate, move to an energy and an economic system that was more equitable and so on, and that in fact we put the world on a sustainable path.
I'll finish off telling you a quick story, one I think I haven't told you, maybe I have. I was a teenager and I sat in a movie in the Labia in Cape Town. It was an American movie, and in the movie this person talks about injustices and says, well, you know, in South Africa people will be free one day. Maybe it takes 10 years, maybe 20, maybe 100. It is inevitable, it will happen. It was a shock to me, but I realized he's right. And it defined for me a lot about what social activism was about.
About having a vision.
You say, this is inevitable, it's going to happen. Yeah. And I think the fact that you now have this outpouring of people saying, we demand accountability, it's going to happen. The challenge for us is, can we as activists expedite that? And I think the thing that should really drive us, that on climate change, we cannot wait 100 years until it happens naturally. Absolutely. We don't have the time, and I suppose that drives you in the morning. That's what will drive us to work together. It's fantastic, Kumi. I'll take you up in 20 years' time. We'll climb up the mountain. We won't go in the cable car.
With our canes.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks.